Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a great start to your week, staying safe and making progress, small or large, in your operations. The main thing is that you're moving forward and hopefully making a profit. Guys, look what I just got for my podcast. I'm so excited. I just used it today, so now the sound should be crystal clear. I wish I could use it for my YouTube channel as well, but unfortunately I'm stuck with this little microphone. Anyway, a few days ago, an article came out by FreightWaves, and the title read, "Shipper Sentiment is Slipping. Is the Freight Market Turning?" Of course, articles like this would pique anyone's interest, anyone who's interested in what is going on in the industry and what we can expect in the future would be interested in such an article. Now, today's video, we're going to look at the general situation in the economy, how it's influencing the freight market. We're not going to be making any predictions. I already made myself clear. I don't like making predictions, but I do think that we can theorize here, right? I think that's the best way to put it. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome to the community. I teach about the trucking industry with a heavy focus on the spot market because I happen to be a spot market carrier, as well as the freight market. And I try to analyze this data to understand what is happening in the industry. If this is a topic that interests you, feel free to subscribe down below and join this amazing community we have built together. So a few videos ago, I mentioned the fact that I'm coming across more and more articles, videos, emails that I'm getting from different brokers and carriers saying that it looks like the freight market is turning around. We were bouncing on the bottom, but now we're about to finally start climbing back up again. Now, if you guys watched my video, you know that I have not seen any signs of that, at least not yet. And I'm not here to make predictions. Instead, I'm here to dissect this whole sentiment that the market is getting better and see what is actually going on. You guys know that I love data. I love statistics. So we're going to be looking at different data points to understand whether there really is any reason for such hurried optimism that the market is turning around. Anyway, let's look at some numbers. Ready? Let's go. All right, so let's start with this FreightWaves article, and I'm going to read this to you. FreightWaves states, "Every quarter, we survey our shipper, carrier, and broker contacts with a handful of sector-specific questions. The idea is to gauge how things feel on the ground level." Now, in order to gauge the overall freight sentiment, these are the questions they ask, right? Number one, near-term profitability. What are your expectations for your profitability in the current quarter compared to the previous one? Then we have the long-term profitability, which is what are your expectations for profitability over the next 12 months? Now, workforce sentiments and business investment sentiments is something that we're not going to really focus on, but basically they're asking, how confident are you that you're going to be making money? So they have been doing, FreightWaves has been doing this survey since Q4 of 2022. And this time around, the shippers are the least positive group. Now, let me read this to you. "Shippers have enjoyed pricing power this year due to excess capacity, but their sentiment this quarter dipped from 10.56 to 8.32, while carrier and broker sentiments increased." Now, this, of course, could mean that shippers are seeing something in the near future that is scaring them or that is making them less confident. And the hopeful thing to do is to hope that whatever does not benefit the shipper benefits us, right? Because we're playing tug of war here. The more money they have to spend on transportation, the worse for them, but the better for us. So let's take a look at their findings by FreightWaves. This is the shipper sentiment as of July 24th. I'm going to attach all of these charts down below as well as links to where I got them. So we can see that actually the things that decreased, and this is from Q4 2022 all the way to Q3 of 2023. And we can see that the things that decreased is the longer term profitability and the near term profitability. Everything else pretty much, it decreased a little bit, but stayed the same. But it's the profitability aspects that shippers were less confident about. So now that we have some context, we're going to be looking at both sides of the same coin, supply and demand. And we're going to start with supply, the supply of trucks. What is happening with capacity? And what we're going to look at is at the monthly numbers as of June. July, just ignore this for now because it's not complete. But June, that is the full month of data. The first thing you need to know is that June was a time where we lost only 1,008 carriers. I mean, it's not only, but it's the lowest amount of net losses since the beginning of April when I started tracking this data, right? But this is not as important as what I'm about to show you. Remember, I always say that carrier population is just one side of the story. The other side is the job market, because what we have been seeing in the past is that carriers would shutter their doors, but then get soaked up by bigger carriers, right? So why don't we look at some job data? So here we have job data, and this is for truck transportation. And we can see that from around February, right here, we have plateaued in terms of available jobs in the trucking transportation industry. Now let's take a look at some numbers. Now this is the number of jobs, and this is 1,372,000, for example, in 2013. What we can see is that, yeah, from 2021, jobs have increased, of course, but keep looking. See, in 2023, we went from 1,611,000 to now 1,609,000. But what I want to show you is this chart that I made. So we have total jobs from January to June. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, and let me move this down. So January to June, and gain and loss from prior months. So from December to January, we gained 4,300 jobs. Then we lost 5,100 jobs. Then a gain, and a loss of 200 jobs in June. At the same time, I started tracking this carrier population loss of carriers in April. So in April, we lost 1,540 carriers, and we gained 1,100 jobs, right? So what does that mean? Well, even if we assume that every single carrier here is a one-man show, even though we know this is not true, most carriers have multiple trucks, they hire drivers, or they lease on owner-operators, whatnot. If we assume that each carrier is a one-man show, the amount of carriers who left the industry or went out of business is more than the amount of jobs increased. And this is true of every single month, April, May, and June. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that carrier capacity, the amount of carriers, is decreasing, and so is capacity, right? It's not decreasing fast enough or steeply enough for us to be able to feel a real significant change just yet, but capacity is decreasing. These carriers that are going out of business and shutting their doors, most of the people who were working within these companies, drivers, owners, whoever, they are not getting absorbed by other carriers at the levels that we have seen before. Okay, now that we have figured out more or less the supply side, let's look at the other portion, which is the demand side. Demand means volume. Volume drives demand. The more freight, the more shippers need those trucks. Now, what drives the volume? Well, one of the biggest things is, of course, consumer spending. If consumers are buying more stuff, retailers and businesses are ordering more stuff from distributors, and distributors order it from manufacturers, and to produce all of that stuff, manufacturers order it from the raw material suppliers, and the domino effect goes on, and we're in the middle of it. So if consumers are spending money and buying stuff that they need or do not need, we get to transport goods at every single point of the logistics chain pretty much. So here I have a chart, right? And again, I'm attaching all of these down below, and I'm giving you the sources so you can see it for yourself. These are US retail sales. The only thing it doesn't show here is that it's less food services. So retail sales minus food services. And what we can see, this is from 2021. We'll start here to now. This is, I think, June of 2023. And we can see that in billions of dollars, consumers have been spending more and more and more. We have plateaued kind of, but realistically, yeah, they have been spending more and more and more. The problem is that this is not adjusted for inflation. And of course, we can see from this chart right here, the inflation numbers. We can see that at one point we were at 9.1 in June. You know, we have been going down since then. In June of 2023, we are at 3%. So this chart is not adjusted for inflation or the consumer price index. Now, for those of you who are wondering, inflation and consumer price index are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. Something you should know is that the consumer price index is basically the value of a basket of goods over time. Why am I telling you this? Well, because I decided in order to figure out whether consumers are actually buying more, we know that they're spending more. To figure out whether they're actually buying more, I decided to use a calculator that I am attaching down below for you to use as well. And I made this chart. This calculator calculates cumulative inflation, considering inflation rate and the consumer price index. Before you get too confused, what I did was I used March of 2021 when the inflation rate was at, let's see, March 2.6%. I don't know what the consumer price index was at that time. And basically, I used that as a baseline and calculated from there. So what I'm trying to say, to make it as clear as possible, is we know that consumers spent in June of 2023, $600 billion, right? So what is the purchasing power of this $600 billion back in March of 2021? Does that make sense? I hope it does. So using this nifty little calculator, I just recalculated the purchasing power of each of these months and years based on March 2021. And what we see here, for those visual folks, is here's 2021, the green line. We can see consumer spending went down. In July, it started increasing, then decreasing. 2022, the orange line, it increased until April, and then it kind of gradually started going down. And here is us, the black line in 2023, bouncing at the bottom. But what we can clearly see is that the purchasing power is less, which means that consumers are buying, they're spending much more, but they're actually buying less stuff. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the consumer psychology, and we're going to focus, of course, on the consumer confidence index. Why is it important? Well, because the confidence index gives us an idea of the mindset of the consumer, right? If the confidence index is high, if they're confident in the future, they are more likely to start spending more money. If the confidence index is low and they think a recession is coming and they're about to lose a ton of money, they're going to be holding on to that cash and that money in their wallets, right? They're not going to be spending much. Now, this is the consumer confidence index. And what is surprising, here we are right now. You can see that this went up. This is July already. And it actually went up from 110.1 in June to 117 in July of 2023. Now, the kicker here is that this is the highest consumer confidence index data point since July of 2021. Why is this happening? Well, because on the news lately, if you haven't heard, everyone is talking about a soft landing rather than a recession. So that is part of the reason consumers are a little bit more hopeful for the future. Now, how confident are they? Well, here is a survey that was done in 2023, July 2023. And this asks, over the next 6 months, do you expect to spend more or less in the following activities and services? Now, there's gambling, amusement parks, hotels, historic sites, movies, theaters. Again, I'm going to attach this down below. But something that we can see is that consumers, most of them, are planning to spend the same amount of money in the next 6 months as they are this month. Some people, thankfully, are planning to spend less than this month in gambling and the lottery. That's good news, right? But in general, the majority of consumers are planning to spend the same amount. All right, finally, let's talk about the inventory to sales ratio. What is it and why is it important? Well, let's start with what is it? Inventory to sales basically shows us how much inventory versus sales there are. Therefore, inventory to sales. Why is it important? If the ratio is high, that means that the inventory is high and it's not moving, right? That means that there's no real demand for the product. And if the inventory is not moving, that means that the businesses are not placing orders for more product. And that means that shippers don't have as much volume to ship. If the ratio is low, the lower it is, the better for us, because that means that the inventory is flying off the shelves. There is more demand than there is product. So retailers and businesses will be placing more and more orders. And that means that we will have more to actually transport. So for example, right here, we can see this is when COVID hit. We can see that the inventory to sales ratio went down. This is when all the panic buying was happening. Things were flying off the shelves. The retailers had to place, or businesses had to place more and more orders, and that's why the volumes were so high. Paired with the fact that people were then on lockdown and had nothing better to do than order stuff they don't really need, but we got something to transport. Now, again, as a reminder, low ratio, good for us. High ratio, bad for us. Unfortunately, what we can see is since around October of 2021, the inventory to sales ratio has been slowly increasing, which means that inventory is not moving as rapidly as we would hope. So businesses and retailers are not as confident when it comes to placing more orders, right? That's why we don't have as much to transport, paired with other things. Of course, there are a ton of other moving pieces, but this is one of them. The inventory is just not moving as fast as it should to make a dent. Now, someone will probably wonder, what about consumer confidence? If it's high, why is nothing moving? Well, because of a few things, right? First of all, the purchasing power, the buying power is down. And second of all, something that we keep seeing is that consumers are spending more money on the service sector, things that don't go on a truck, than on the physical goods side. Okay, so now let's put everything we just talked about together. On the supply side, yes, we see that carriers are decreasing. The net amount of carriers is consistently negative. And to top it off, the amount of jobs added, or as of last month lost, but the amount of jobs added theoretically do not show us that those carriers that are leaving the industry or the carriers that are going out of business are getting absorbed by other carriers. However, something that we also see is that even though capacity is decreasing, it's not decreasing quickly enough to put a dent in the market. Then we have the consumer spending, right? We saw that they spent over $600 billion, which was the highest point, maybe not the highest, but one of the highest points since a while ago. But something we have also seen is that the consumer's purchasing power, which is not a surprise at all, has decreased because of that consumer price index and that inflation. So if we compare using the baseline of March 2021, consumers are actually buying much less while spending more. Now, consumer confidence is something that was a really nice surprise, right? Consumer confidence is at its highest since July of 2021, which was shocking to me. However, we saw, according to surveys, and I know it's just a survey, limited amount of people, that most consumers anticipate spending the same amount as they did this month over the next 6 months. And finally, we saw that inventories, unfortunately, are not moving as much as they need to in order to make a dent, right? There is no sense of urgency there. That inventory is just sitting on the shelves. So where the heck is all this positive sentiment coming from right now? All of these articles and videos and emails and everything saying that we are finally making a turnaround, right, in the market. Well, this is my opinion, and it's only my opinion. You might have your own, and I'd be very curious to hear, but I believe that this positive sentiment is not coming from the fact that we're about to, shoot up into the stratosphere. It's coming from the fact that we are bouncing on the bottom, and so far we're not going any lower. Another possibility, which I have thought about, and I know this is a very pessimistic view, but again, we're theorizing here. Shipper sentiment is decreasing, especially their long-term profitability sentiment. Now, the way we can look at it is they are expecting to spend more on transportation in the future, therefore they are going to be earning less net, right? This is the way we would all love to see it, because that means that we're going to be earning more. However, another possibility is that shippers believe that they're not going to be getting as many orders in the near future or in the long term, right? This is another way of looking at it. Is it true? I'm not saying that this is set in stone. We're just theorizing here, right? Shipper sentiment may decline for several reasons, and carriers could be just one of those reasons. But I always urge you to think a little bit bigger. See, predictions, I don't like making predictions because they're nearly impossible in this type of market. There are a million moving pieces, and any one of them can change the future, basically. Who knows? After that UFO congressional hearing, maybe we can hope that aliens will arrive to Earth in the middle of August and decide that they want to go shopping, and those volumes will skyrocket. Anyway, guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope that I managed to broaden your thinking a little bit, maybe teach you something new. Whatever the case may be, I'm wishing you an amazing rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next video.